Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Argylle. Argylle was one of my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year. Unfortunately, life got super busy. I had not had a chance to go out to the theater and watch it, but it came out on Apple TV the other day, and I finally got around to watching it. And unfortunately, I don't really think it lives up to being on my top 10 most anticipated of the year. But before I go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're getting closer and closer to 200 subscribers, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can be in that first 200. This might be an odd place to start out, but I want to start out with the editing because I feel like for the most part in the film, at least there at the beginning, the editing kind of takes a forefront. And so the editing is something that stands out to me both with the good and with the bad. They have this idea of kind of going back and forth between what's really happening and kind of what our main character Ellie is writing in her book and kind of maybe what she imagines. And so I think that's a very, very interesting idea to kind of be cutting back and forth between the two. And the idea definitely has potential. I just don't necessarily know if it works. I feel like going back and forth like that, while, like I said, it's a good idea, and I definitely appreciate them for trying it, I think it kind of messes with the flow of the movie. Even though everything is kind of planned out well, and all of the editing is done well, it's executed well, I don't necessarily think that kind of the cutting back and forth as much as they do, I just don't think it works. It kind of just feels disjointed. They do pay attention to detail when they're going back and forth like that, and I appreciate them trying something new and something unique, but I think overall it just doesn't really work. It just kind of feels like you're jerking the audience back and forth. I think disjointed probably is the best way to describe it. I will say though, that technique of kind of flipping back and forth works really well during the action, especially there in the first act. I think that helped make it a little bit more unique, and I really enjoyed that. And as far as the editing goes, I will say that they did a good job throughout the action sequences as a whole. There will be a few times here and there where I feel like it was kind of easy to lose track of the characters and where they are in the space. They did a good job of actually letting us see the action, and they did a great job with some of the camera movements and cinematography during the action. Cinematography and the editing really helped give the action sequences a lot of energy. A couple of the other editing things I noticed is that there's some very obvious ADR here, and it's obvious enough to where it kind of pulled me out of the movie. You know, we get like this reaction shot of a character while another character speaking, and there were a few times where I was just thinking, that character is absolutely not saying those words. And it's that obvious, and it kind of pulled me out a little bit. Like, it's just painfully clear that that actor is not saying the same words. I feel like they had to have a couple of takes that wasn't as obvious, and if they didn't, they absolutely should have. I think the story here has a lot of potential too. It has some really good ideas, it has some interesting developments, but I don't necessarily know how well it works as a whole. I think some of the story beats aren't really handled with nuance, like at all. There's definitely plenty of twists and turns in this film, but I think some work and some don't. I think to really have a good twist, you have to kind of lay the groundwork for it. You have to have just a little bit of foreshadowing to where you go back and watch the film and everything makes sense leading up to the twist. Kind of like in The Sixth Sense. It just maybe gives you some foreshadowing on some stuff that you probably won't pick up the first time watching the film. And I think maybe one or two of the twists are like that. You might pick up a couple of the instances of foreshadowing here and there, but I think there's quite a few twists in this is just to have a twist. It's just, here's a twist just so we can say we have another one. And because of that, I feel like there's a lot of explaining that this movie has to do. Like, for example, at one point in the film, it kind of has to hit the brakes, absolutely come to a stop and sit down and explain everything to us. And I feel like with a really good twist, you don't necessarily need to put the brakes on and sit down and explain every single thing to us. I think with a good twist, we should be able to put the pieces together and understand it. Maybe with a little bit of explanation, but you definitely don't need to just stop the movie to try to catch the audience up. And without spoiling anything, I will say I think there is a few twists. There's a few things here and there, especially toward the end of the film in the third act, that is just a little bit too convenient. And I will say there's a few twists here that I think you can absolutely see coming, and it's not necessarily that much of a twist, but the movie kind of treats it like it is. And I think that's just one of the issues that it has with how many twists it has. Like, there's a large volume of twists in this film. I think the pacing in this film can be odd at times. I think that shows up especially toward the end. I think the film feels too long. I don't know if it actually is in, reality, because it's not that long of a movie. It's a little bit over 2 hours, like 2:15, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's not that long of a movie, but it feels long. By the time we get to the third act, I'm just kind of ready for it to wrap up, and it feels like it's about to wrap up like 3 or 4 separate times. And I think that's one of the things that works against it in terms of the pacing, and I feel like that's something that makes it feel longer than what it actually is. There are times at the end where it just keeps going and they keep adding things for our characters to have to deal with, and I'm all for throwing a bunch of stuff at your characters, seeing how they react, seeing how they overcome these different situations. But some of that in this film just feels unnecessary. And I think sometimes the pace can affect the stakes in this film. Like, we get the stakes of Ellie being in danger because of what she has written before in her previous books and what she's getting ready to write in her next book. But there was another thing here to the story to kind of add to the stakes. And by the time the third act started to come around, I kind of forgot why this thing was important. And also in terms of the script, I just don't necessarily think all of the dialogue is up to par. I think some of it feels really clunky, and the actors try their best. They do their best with some of the lines that they're delivering, but you can tell it's kind of a struggle. It's like people don't really talk like this, and it doesn't feel natural. Now, some of these lines do work as well as they do because of how talented these actors are. They can almost pull off some of these awkward lines. But this is absolutely an incredibly talented cast. Basically, from top to bottom, this is filled with people that you would recognize and honestly probably like. And just about everybody in this cast is always great in whatever they do. I really like Bryce Dallas Howard in this. I think she did a good job here, and she's one of my favorite actresses working today. And I absolutely love all of the stuff that she's directed. She plays this kind of meek, reclusive writer very well. It's very believable. And you can absolutely see the subtlety in her performance as the character continues to change and grow over the course of the film. And I think her performance really helps you buy some of those twists in the film. Maybe with a lesser actress, they might not would work as well as they do, the ones that do work. But you can look back on her performance and it really kind of helps connect the dots with everything. Even when this story gets a little bit wacky, I think her performance really helps ground the character. And her performance makes you like her character pretty much right from the beginning. Sam Rockwell is a lot of fun. I love seeing him in anything. And in this film, you definitely buy him as this super confident spy who is just trying to do what's right. He's really funny in this. A lot of his line deliveries bring a lot of laughs to this film. And overall, he brings a great energy to this film. Unfortunately, I feel like some of the twists that are in this film kind of, I guess, betray his character a little bit. I guess by that, I mean, it kind of forces his character, at least for like a brief couple minutes, a brief second or whatever, to kind of act out of character. He performs his character well, but I just kind of feel like some of those instances just hurt the character as a whole. I think it's fun to have guys like Henry Cavill and John Cena together in this film, but they're not in it a lot, but I do enjoy the time that they are on screen. There's not really any depth to those characters, at least from what we've seen. We're relying more on some of the extra information we get throughout the film. Bryan Cranston plays an entertaining villain. He always gives a great performance. And Samuel L. Jackson is always having fun. He's always fun to watch, no matter what role he's playing. And you could tell in this film, Samuel L. Jackson probably shot for like a day, maybe, but I enjoyed every second he was on screen. The cast overall is great. There's a ton of talent here, but I think the characters aren't all well-rounded. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the action here as a whole is good. Matthew Vaughn typically does a really good job with action. He has a certain style to his films, and he handles action very well. Although this might not be his best in terms of action, this is still fun, and it still has a lot of energy. The last action sequence is a lot of fun, but I kind of feel like the CGI pulls me out of it a bit. But I kind of wish the action throughout the whole film was a little bit closer to this last bit, because this last bit felt a little bit more like the typical Matthew Vaughn style. It's a little bit more wacky, and I kind of wish the rest of the film was like that. Although, like I said, the other action sequences are good. They just don't really feel 100% like a Matthew Vaughn action film. So unfortunately, I kind of feel like this last action sequence doesn't really fit the tone of the rest of the film. And that's unfortunate, because that's probably one of my favorite sequences. I think as a whole throughout this film, I was just wanting a little bit more of that Matthew Vaughn flair that we definitely got there toward the end. And I kind of mentioned it, but I think as a whole, the CGI was kind of spotty. There were a lot of shots where it just didn't look that great to me. It was a little bit distracting at times, and I feel like there was more of this that could have been done practically. There's some fun to be had here. There's some good performances to enjoy, and there's some decent action, and there's a story with a ton of potential. I just think that the good and the not so good are just about equal. I will say I definitely can't recommend this to everyone, but also at the same time, I don't really think anybody would hate this film. So I think I'm going to have to give it a 2.5 out of 5. But that's it. That's my review of Argylle. Have you seen this film? Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. Was this on your most anticipated of the year like it was on mine? Did it live up to that hype for you? Let me know. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're getting closer and closer to 200 subscribers. So if you like me, go ahead and hit subscribe. Even if you don't like me, go ahead and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.